Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to a very special video where we're talking about handicapping two-year-old maiden races at Saratoga. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the NYRA Bets YouTube channel. Well, today I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleague at NYRA and the person I trust most when talking about two-year-old maiden races, particularly at Saratoga, and that is Maggie Wolfendale. Maggie, thank you so much for being on and talking about these really fun races that we're going to be seeing this summer.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. You know, these are my favorite races to talk about. And so much talent is unveiled up in those 40 days of racing with the juveniles.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it a little bit, but maybe just for the beginning player, explain the difference and what makes Saratoga maiden races so much more special than maybe some of the other maiden races that we might see during the Belmont at Aqueduct meet or during the Winter Aqueduct.
Well, everybody wants to win in Saratoga. It's the place to be seen. It's the uppermost echelon of racing that we have in America. So you will find that trainers will target those Saratoga races over races out of town. Also, we have a great series of two-year-old graded stakes for both males and females, 3 to be exact. You think of a really nice two-year-old for Linda Rice by the name of City Zip. He swept all 3. It's not an easy thing to do, especially in the modern era where trainers do like to give their horses a bit more time in between races. But yes, those are the races that everybody's targeting. So therefore, they're bringing the best that they have in their barn.
Absolutely. And just to reinforce this point, last year alone, we saw Just Steel, Locked, Dornoch, Seize the Gray, Drum Roll Please, all of these horses that you saw on the Kentucky Derby Trail, winning the Preakness, winning the Belmont, debut and run and win up at Saratoga in different cases. So it is a star-studded event. And it's one of those things, somebody found an old video that I had taken of Seize the Gray beating Dornoch, and I didn't even realize I had it. And they retweeted. They go, "Hey, that's a pretty prophetic tweet," because I said, I think you're going to hear more from these two horses later on. It turned out it was, once in a while I'm right about these things. But when it comes time to handicapping two-year-old races, some people avoid these types of races because there are a lot of unknown quantities when you're talking about a young horse. But you are around horses so much. You know so much about pedigree. You pay so much attention to workouts. I was wondering if you could just walk people through a little bit of how you approach handicapping two-year-old races, maybe in terms of your pre-race evaluation, and then in terms of what you see in the paddock and what you convey to listeners on America's Day at the Races.
So for the little amount of form that you have, they take me personally the longest amount of time to prepare for, because you do a lot of pedigree digging. I mean, that's truly where I start first. Or sometimes I'll kind of try to maybe test myself and watch workouts first to see, well, this horse actually moves more like a turf horse. And then when I go through the pedigree, I'm like, oh, well, that's because 3 of the siblings all ran better on the turf. So yes, you dive into it in that respect. I generally, for Saratoga maidens, go back 2 generations, look up all the stats for the sires. Are they win early sires? Are they producing, horses that are showing up and winning early on in their careers? And you also apply that to the bottom side of the pedigree, the dam side of the pedigree. Did the dam win first out? Are the siblings winning first time out? I think that's an imperative, little nugget that you can rely on a lot of times when trying to handicap these races. And then, like I said, I'll go back and watch works, whether they sold at auction. OBS and Basic Tipton have great access on their websites to those sales workout videos, or up in Saratoga, we have great access to XBTV and how these horses are training and preparing for their debuts. So you can gather a bit from that, and you can try to see who they're working with to gauge their talent levels. And then too, you tend to look and maybe rely a little bit on trainers, of course, and what how well they perform with their first time starters and their 2-year-olds.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a lot of really hot sires happening just this year. Vekoma, for instance, is a very popular first out sire who's just has his first crop coming out this year. And they have been just blowing up the Kentucky circuit right now, winning a lot down at Churchill. So it'll be interesting to see whether we see some of these Vekomas up here in New York as well. We had a very nice George Weaver one, actually just finished second a couple of weeks ago to the full sibling to Fierceness. So a lot of big pedigrees, to your point, that we're going to see over the summer up here. And so diving into those pedigrees, diving into the workouts, I'm curious, when you look at a workout, you mentioned looking at the workout partner to see, what's the quality of partner that this horse has. What are you specifically looking for in a workout in terms of, are you looking for how the horse moves? Are you just looking for maybe how the horse competes against the workout partner? I mean, what are you looking for specifically in those clips?
More so primarily how the horse is moving. Also, I think they catch a lot of gate workouts in Saratoga, especially on the main track. So I always like to see how the horse is braking as well. It's a great indicator. A lot of these races are won on the front end, especially the real short sprints, the 5.5, the 6s. When you get into 7, 8, so sometimes you'll see horses be able to close a little bit easier. Yes, you do look at how they are performing against their workmate, what the rider's cues are. Is the rider flat out on their belly, kind of driving the horse to the wire, or are their feet in the dashboard and they're, really restraining the horse? The latter are the types of workouts you want to see. I'm just indicating that the horse is operating on raw ability alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Always so impressive when you see a horse just loom up and go past the workout partner while just I mean, you're right, just going all the way back. I mean, they're trying to hold this horse back for everything they can. So it's really exciting to see those types of works when you catch that. Now, obviously, you're in the paddock for all of these races, or a great many of them, and you've done your pre-evaluation. But what are the things in the last 20 minutes, when the horses make out to the paddock, what are the things you're looking for in terms of their behavior, in terms of maybe even once they get on the track and the warm-ups that the jockeys are giving and things like that?
Well, when it comes, there's this thing I like to say, there's the perfect storm of, well, I kind of keyed in on maybe 2 or 3 horses in my, pre-paddock handicapping and evaluation. And then when one of those horses, let's say, just comes in and wows me, I'm like, yes, I get a good feeling. I know this is going to work. This is my pick. And then I get really disappointed when I look up at the board and he's like 2 to 5. But sometimes they're like, 5, 8 to 1. Things I'm looking for. When you're dealing with 2-year-olds, physical maturity is essential. You want a horse that is possibly more physically along in their development than their other rivals. So there's sometimes I'll use the word backwards. A horse is backwards when their hind end is really elevated as opposed to their it has to catch up. So that's a backward horse. That's a horse that's still developing, still growing. And a lot of times I feel like those ones aren't necessarily going to win first time out. You want a horse that looks strong, that's, physically imposing, and you want a horse that's focused. I'm not saying that some horses, don't walk in and the colts are studdish or the fillies are a little bit nervous, especially Saratoga, and they don't go out and win. But more often than not, those are negative things to look at. A colt that is acting distracted and studdish is going to often be distracted and green in a race. So a lot of times it parlays over to how they perform within the race. So you're looking for those indicators of, are they professional? Are they focused? Are they allowing their connections to get the tack on with ease? And a lot of times it does have to do with the trainer's preparations. I mean, Steve Asmussen, for instance, is a trainer who schools constantly. So those horses have all been there, done that, schooled, multiple times, pretty much every morning with the pony. So there's no, option of misbehaving with the pony. But then you just find some of those horses that are just so much classier, so much more professional, just so much more ready than their competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And this also reminds me, back in fifth grade, I had a classmate, Brian Sipe, who was already 5'10", and I swear to God, had facial hair. Some people just mature a little bit more
Oh,
quickly. To your point, horses are the same way, where it's like, those 2-year-olds sometimes can come in and you sometimes will see a horse who's just very scopy, or like to your point, backwards, and you go, man, this horse wants either maybe a lot longer of a distance, or this horse just needs to fill out a lot more. And sometimes you'll find those horses that are just sprinters that really do excel in those initial races.
yeah, exactly. I mean, you think about it, like think about the high school football team, right? Like you were saying with Brian, the guys that at 14 are 6 foot and already nearly 200 pounds. Well, they're going to excel on the football field, right? As a high schooler.
Right.
And then you might have, I don't know, like a running back that's this small weedy kid. Well, he's not going to outrun that guy who's going to be tackling him. Yeah.
Right. So this is not a good recipe for success in that space. So now, one of the things I actually just the other day went back and watched your coverage on horseback during the Belmont Stakes. And one of the things you pointed out right before the race was run was what a big warm up Luis Saez gave Dornoch. And you made sure to point that out to everybody listening on the broadcast. And I'm wondering, with 2-year-old races, because in many instances it's their first time on the track, do you pay much attention to who's getting a big warm up? Pay attention to maybe who's just sauntering around with the pony? Is that something that's more important maybe later on in their careers rather than in that first race?
Right. Because a lot of times you're not really knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
I think with Dornoch, they have realized now, well into his 3-year-old season, that this horse needs to be warmed up because he performs best when he's on or near the lead, but he has trouble getting out of the gate. So the best way to rectify that is keep him moving. So when he gets in the gate, he's ready to push off, his blood's pumping, he's ready to go. I don't think you necessarily know that about a horse in their debuts as 2-year-olds. So again, I mean, Steve Asmussen comes into my mind. I think he's a great example because his horses never leave the pony. Never. They warm up generally with a halter and shank on. And he's the only guy that does that. But his horses often show speed. So you can't really, it's just the way they're trained. They're all going to be, a lot of times juveniles, and especially in those big barns, they're going to be trained nearly the same way until their career kicks off and those trainers realize they need to be trained differently. So I don't think you can necessarily rely on warm-ups and how they're warmed up as much as you can with older horses, but you can watch those warm-ups for indicators of how they're moving and their professionalism. Sometimes I don't get a good grasp of a horse if they really want the turf, based on what I see in the paddock, based on what I see in their pedigree. But I can watch them move, and that's when I know that they're better at turf. Like a horse that pops out in my mind, 40 Under. Maybe that's the name.
Yeah.
I can't remember. The Jeremiah Englehart, Bill Parcells horse, I think.
Yes.
I couldn't get a grasp on him. And I think it was his second start. He was switching to the turf. But once I watched him move, that's what said it. And he won.
Yep. Absolutely. So those are some great tips. Always exciting races to watch and get excited for, because you're not only seeing these very precocious 2-year-olds and all the great stakes races that we do have up at Saratoga, but as I mentioned earlier, you could see the future Kentucky Derby winner, the future Preakness, the future Belmont winner in these 2-year-old races. So a lot of fun, and definitely encourage listeners to make sure to play those 2-year-old races. Make sure to watch Maggie on Fox Sports and America's Day at the Races throughout the summer. Going to have a lot of great content. So Maggie, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope everybody, if they can't be at Saratoga, which I encourage everybody to try to be there if they can. But you can catch us every day live on Fox Sports for Saratoga Live.
No place better. I'd rather be. I'm thrilled to spend the summer up there with you and the whole gang. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to NYRA Bets YouTube. For Maggie Wolfendale, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a happy and prosperous day at the track and reminding you it's now post time.